Good afternoon, my beautiful and most highly respected babes and babettes. I am your resident active advocate. This is definitely not the same day on which I was making my last video. Definitely not. Wink! Reason is I'm going to be displaced from my office later this week because I might have mold in my office wall, and I practically live in this room. So that's not good. People are coming to check on that by literally ripping out my wall, which is going to be fun for the whole family. So I would prefer to do these videos in a more professional setting, if not a professional tone. Gods know I am not known for my professionalism. But yeah, that's why I'm kind of doing these all as a round. And you'll be seeing this tomorrow, i.e. Tuesday, but I'm making it on Monday. So this kind of goes against my usual policy, but desperate times, desperate measures. Here we go. Cool. So today, wink, we are going to be talking about the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, Articles 7, 8, 9. No, I'm wrong. 12 through 16. Sorry. Hard to keep track of these things when I'm not actually on multiples of 5. Yeah. Math plus me equals not happening. Alright, so, maximizing the document now. Bam. It's so very pretty. Ah! Article 12. Okay, this is divided into subsections. Number 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to manifest, practice, develop, and teach their spiritual and religious traditions, customs, and ceremonies. The right to maintain, protect, and have access to privacy to their privacy to their religious and cultural sites, the right to the use and control of their ceremonial objects, and the right to the repatriation of their human remains. Good gods, yes. All right, 2. States shall seek to enable the access and or repatriation of ceremonial objects and human remains in their possession through fair, transparent, and effective mechanisms developed in conjunction with Indigenous peoples concerned. Okay, this one interests me because when I was taking the summer course I took in Indigenous spirituality back in university, this was years ago, oh my goodness, we made our own drums, and there was this whole very vast protocol on how to do it and how not to do it, and if you are female, you can't be making your drum while you are menstruating. You also can't touch any kind of ceremonial object when you are menstruating. Not because of misogyny, though. It's because in some, I don't know if this applies to all, but in some Indigenous cultures, women are considered very spiritually powerful when we are on our periods, okay? Traditionally, it's called our moon time by at least the people I was working with, okay? They were a married couple. He was Seneca Nation, she was Oneida Nation. So I don't know exactly how much their traditions would have varied. I know that their native tongues, their native languages varied quite a lot. They actually said it's the difference between Chinese and Italian. So they both had to learn English to communicate with one another. But the whole thing about ceremonial objects, and I actually checked with a friend of mine about this. White people or non-Indigenous people should not be using them at all. I made my drum under the supervision of 2 Indigenous professors, okay? I never really used it on a ceremonial basis. The one and only ceremony I ever conducted with it was bringing it to life, so to speak, because here here we have a spiritual belief of these particular cultures, at least of some. I don't know of all of them, because as I say, there are 500 to 600 distinct cultures in Canada alone. But the idea was that when the drum is brought to life in ceremony, it is thought to then house a spirit, a living spirit. So the drum is itself a living thing, and not exactly an extension of the maker, but it's not also the possession of the maker. It's its own thing. So the whole idea behind non-Indigenous people using these artifacts, using these objects, that could definitely be considered disrespectful. And I fully understand like where my friend was coming from with that, because I said to him, I can't find my drum, but if I can, do I have your permission to use it on video? And he said to me, no, absolutely not. And I'm like, okay, why? And he explained to me why. And okay, it is cultural appropriation, intended or otherwise, and I don't want to do that to him. I don't want to do that to any other Indigenous people who are in touch with their traditional roots and see the value in the drum as well as in other objects that are used in ceremony. I could talk about that with the tobacco industry. Good job, North America. Oh my God. Not good. Not good. That is a not good thing that happens. But, so basically with me, the whole idea, don't use your drum. If you can find it, cool, but don't use it. You're not Indigenous. And I'm okay with that. It would be the same pretty much as like a non-Christian, I guess, using a cross for whatever, some kind of private ceremony. That would be by Christians considered disrespectful. I'm not a Christian either, but I'm not going to do that either. So, if we're going to have standards, they have to be universal. Okay? You can't treat other people's traditions and values as inferior to your own. Okay? Or those of your culture. So, in terms of the use of ceremonial objects, yeah, that belongs to Indigenous peoples alone. As to the repatriation of these objects, that's really, really hella important, because with the repatriation of these objects comes the repatriation of culture. Oh my gosh. Like, I cannot express to you how much there is a tie-in between the ceremonial objects and the religions, plural, okay? Like I say, and this is not a false equivalency, if every single cross in the world were to be burned and Christians were not allowed to make more, you get this? You get where I'm going with this? This is not a false equivalency. And that would not be considered a good thing. All right. Maximizing. Moving on. Boo, boo, boo. All right. Article 13. Also subsectioned, if that's a word. 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to revitalize, use, develop, and transmit to future generations their histories, languages, oral traditions, philosophies, writing systems, and literatures, and to designate and retain their own names for communities, places, and persons. 2. States shall take effective measures to ensure that this right is protected, and also to ensure that Indigenous peoples can understand and be understood in political, legal, and administrative proceedings, where necessary through the provision of interpretation or by other appropriate means. Please, 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 please start teaching the regional Indigenous languages as required courses in schools. In Canada, we are required through elementary school up to early high school to learn French. French is another colonial language. I have never used it in my daily life. I barely know any French at all. I lost it completely because I live in an Anglophone province. I live in Ontario. All right, Quebec is right next door. They are a Francophone province. And right next door to that is New Brunswick, which is our only officially bilingual province. Though throughout the country it is mandatory by federal law that we learn French in school. Okay, where are all the other languages that are actually endemic to this continent? I have had this discussion with y'all before. You know how I feel about this. The destruction of culture is done through the destruction of language, amongst other things. Language is what defines us as a people. Can you sit there and imagine me starting to speak in fluent Swahili? Probably not, because that's not my culture. And I don't know a syllable of Swahili except for anything you've heard in The Lion King. Yeah, anyway, moving on from that, though, there was actually a news story a couple of months ago that, I think it was even on, like, the normal news, not just online, but, about the St. John's River in New Brunswick being renamed, i.e., properly named, the Wolastoq, okay? That is Wolastoqey, the language. Okay, the language is called Wolastoqey. The river was called Wolastoq, okay? Wolastoqey means the people of the beautiful river. So, Wolastoq means beautiful river. That is Wolastoqey territory, that is Mi'kmaq territory, and the people over there, as far as I'm aware, were fighting for the right to take back that name. And it's not even difficult to say. Okay? I think a lot of the problem that people have, nowadays at least, is just the total cultural laziness surrounding the learning of other languages. Here's the thing, English is another language to people who don't speak it too. English is very, very ridiculously difficult to learn. It's, I think, the third hardest language in the world to learn. However, in giving a statistic like that, I don't know if they're accounting for indigenous languages spoken on the North and South American continents. All right? I have seen Wolastoqey written out. Every single one of their words is like 10 syllables long. I know, like, very, 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 very few linguistic kind of rules. But, you know, it's like these things that you pick up, right? And the people themselves, I'm not even talking about whites here now, the people themselves, 1,000,000,000,000% have the right to the repatriation of their language. If the language still exists, and as I have said previously in this series, oh, have we tried our damnedest to wipe out those languages. Thank God we didn't succeed all the way. Good. If the languages are still in existence, they should proliferate. I'm not even going to say be allowed to proliferate, because that sets up a system of control, which yet again puts us in control, which I don't want, because we've set up this whole system of we're the majority, therefore we have power. That's not how this works, okay? We have power within our own culture, sure. Why do we have power over other cultures? Can you explain that one to me, please? Because that pisses me off. It's like NOMA, which is a philosophical term that means non-overlapping magisteria. N-O-M-A, non-overlapping magisteria, okay? We do not have the right to control other cultures. I will say that until I'm blue in the face. Come on. You know, back off and let the people heal. Back off and let the people be who they actually are. Back off and let them regrow the limbs that we attempted to cut off. Fun. Next. Good Lord. Okay, so this document does make me angry. Yay. Okay. Article 14. This is also subsectioned. Is that a word? Anyway. Indigenous peoples have the right to establish and control their educational systems and institutions providing education in their own languages in a manner appropriate to their cultural methods of teaching and learning, which are different from ours. Okay, 2. Indigenous individuals, particularly children, have the right to all levels and forms of education of the state without discrimination. Yes. 3. States shall, in conjunction with Indigenous peoples, take effective measures in order for Indigenous individuals, particularly children, including those living outside their communities, to have access, when possible, to an education in their own culture and provided in their own language. Oh boy, this jumps off the last point, and as I say, this is astonishingly important. Like, okay, I know that other cultures have gone extinct before. For example, Latin is no longer a lingua franca literally anywhere. Vatican City uses it pretty much as a joke. Okay, but you don't get any masses around the world anymore in Latin because Vatican II instated that masses be given in the language of whatever nation they're in, okay? Or even of whatever region they're in. Why is this not being applied where other cultures are concerned? I put that in quotation marks because it makes it, to say other creates the us versus them dichotomy, and I'm not a fan of that. Y'all know I'm not a fan of that. I honestly think that control should please, please, please be given up by the people who have no right to that control, and the people who have the right to control what goes on in their own families, what goes on in their own cultures, what goes on their own land. Very loud back outside, I'm sorry. That they be the ones to control how their children learn. It's when possible, if the education of Indigenous children is left up to white people, we should be the ones to set a good example for how reconciliation should take place. Honor the children's culture, honor the children's language. No matter how difficult the child's name is to pronounce, write it down phonetically if you have to, okay? Learn how to use that name properly. Because a lot of Indigenous kids now at least, in this generation, like 2 generations after the one in which I was born, the youngins, the real youngins who are just being born, they're being given traditional names. And I love that because that is a way of taking back your culture. That is a way of revitalizing your culture. And the whole idea of backing off from the Christian names also, quite frankly, spits in the face of the residential school systems. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And it's very, very important. If we're going to have an Indigenous Renaissance, which, yes, I would love to see that. Thank you. Because being surrounded by people with whose ways you are not familiar also makes you smarter. But if we're going to do that, we, the colonialists, need to back off and let people do their thing. All right? So the narrative should not be controlled by just one voice. All right? We need to have as many voices as can scream at the government and at history. As I say, get louder! Next. 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. Article 15, also subsectioned. Wow. 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to the dignity and diversity of their cultures, traditions, histories, and aspirations, which shall be appropriately reflected in educational and public information. We'll get to that. 2. States shall take effective measures in consultation and cooperation with the Indigenous peoples concerned to combat prejudice and eliminate discrimination, and to promote tolerance, understanding, and good relations among Indigenous peoples and all other segments of society. Okay, so the whole idea behind, what was it? Okay, yeah. All right. The right to the dignity of their own kind of education. That is not very well executed in the mainstream Canadian school system. I'm sorry, it's not, at least when I went to school. The most I ever learned about Indigenous cultures when I was, at least in elementary school, was Louis Riel, bad guy, not true. Tecumseh, good guy. Not sure if that's true. That was it. That was literally it. Okay, and that to me speaks of incredible cultural arrogance. Again, we are writing the narrative. That is exactly what that just bellows to me. We are writing the narrative. People who look like me. I don't have a problem with people who look like me. I look like me, and I love me. But when yours is the only voice that is allowed to be, heard at all, that's an issue, okay? Yes, I sit here and talk at my screen nonstop, but I am also attempting to say to people, don't listen to me. Listen to the people who have been systemically, historically, and abhorrently oppressed. Listen to their children and get the real stories, plural, because there are many, many narratives that have not been allowed to proliferate throughout the past 400 years or so on this continent. Not good. That's not a good look for people who consider themselves progressive. That's not a good look. For people who don't care, can I ask why? Is it because you want to maintain control? I think it's because you want to maintain control. And usually people who want to maintain control are the ones who are most afraid. Because, the us versus them narrative, that's all about control. And control, doesn't lead to good things. When you're in control and you have all the power, all the money, all the resources, all the history, and you don't have to look at the history of other people, then you don't have to see where your own ignorance lies. I was going to say where your own blind spots are, but number one, pointing at my left eye in which I am blind. Number two, my best friend is blind and watches these videos. Number three, I'm not ableist like that. So, yeah, if you don't have to observe your own ignorance, if you don't have to deal with it, that's going to lead to a comfortable life. That's it. It's not going to lead to a very rich or fulfilling life. Not if you ask me. But I'm me. And I'm weird. Maybe. Or maybe I just like to think. Next. Okay, Article 16. I believe this is last for today. Yes, it is. All right, this one is also in subsections. I gotta stop saying that because most of them are. Sorry. Okay, Article 16. 1. Indigenous peoples have the right to establish their own media in their own languages and to have access to all forms of non-Indigenous media without discrimination. 2. States shall take effective measures to ensure that state-owned media duly reflect Indigenous cultural diversity. States, without prejudice to ensuring full freedom of expression, should encourage privately owned media to adequately reflect Indigenous cultural diversity. Okay, the problem I have here is that privately owned media does not have to be regulated basically in any way, okay? There is a kind of podcast sort of thing I used to watch. I'm not gonna name it because this guy got his ass kicked off of both YouTube and Twitter, and I can proudly pronounce that I am one of the people who helped in getting him kicked off Twitter. But basically what this guy was advocating was that privately owned media, you should be allowed to do whatever you want. And that includes all this racist crap that people like me are trying to put down. For reference, yes, this man is a white supremacist, and I have seen videos he's made about Indigenous peoples on this continent, and oh my god, not a good look. Not a good look. Stop it. Stop it. You don't know what you're talking about, and you're dumb. Sorry, you're dumb. You are. But other than that, people who actually want to try should be given the opportunity to do so. I have discussed on this platform before the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, okay? It is our, like, news, radio, and TV up here. Basically, it's a Canada-wide network, okay? They have on the radio every day, I can't remember the exact time slot, it probably shifts around, but they have Indigenous Hour, wherein they will play Indigenous music. Probably how Dad discovered Mr. Jeremy Dutcher for me. Thank you, Dad. I love you. You're a good person, and so is Dutcher. But I have discussed the CBC with Indigenous friends of mine, and I said to them, oh, they're so much better than the usual media outlets. They're so left-leaning and progressive, and one of them says to me, I am so sick of hearing that. No, they are not. And I can see where they're coming from, because Indigenous Hour kind of says you belong here and nowhere else. Once we're done dealing with you, we can get back to normal and do what, the majority would prefer. That's gross, and I don't like it. So beforehand, when talking about the TRC, I also talked about APTN, Aboriginal People's Television Network, I believe is what that stands for. That's the channel you actually want to go to, okay? For TV, anyway. I don't know about radio. I would have to look into that myself. But there are programs that are on APTN, and also programs on different radio stations, I'm sure, that are given in Indigenous languages and have their content all over it. And that is really, really good. That is really good. What is not good is that these things are considered niche, that these things are considered other. And Canada, unlike America, has this sort of reputation, or at least we proudly give ourselves this reputation, of not being a melting pot, of not making everything the same, of instead being a cultural tossed salad, where you have the lettuce, and you have the tomatoes, and you have the cucumbers, and you have the celery. Celery is my favorite vegetable, thank you, it's yummy. But you can tell all of these things apart from one another, even though they're all part of the salad. I don't fully believe that that is the case in Canada. I think that cultural homogeneity has been forced on us just as much as it's been forced in America. And that is not good, because that leads not only to nationalism, but that leads to imperialism. Not a fan. Not a fan, because out of imperialism comes colonialism. And we all know, because I'm sitting here doing this right now, just how badly that went. So, here's the thing. Look around for actual media networks that have, Indigenous-based media in them, or, that promote these, quote, different media, and listen to what people have to say. And barring that, do what I did and find yourself some Indigenous people online to talk to. And no, I'm not there because they're just Indigenous and I'm trying to, culturally pigeonhole them. God, it's getting dark in here. But I like these people a lot. Like, just as individuals, I all the people with whom I have made friends thus far, they're good people. Like, come on. Good people are not difficult to find, and you can find them in every single country and culture on Earth. I don't care who you are. Go looking. Go. Go. Go listen to media that is not yours. Go talk to people who are not yours. And learn something, because that's what I'm trying to do too, and I don't want to be a hypocrite. So, yeah, I actively advocate for you to go and do the same. This is also me sounding very self-aggrandizing. I get that, but hopefully you can forgive me. All right, I need to stop now because it's raining outside and it's getting dark and I look like a ghost. So that's fun. I'm actually uploading this the day after I'm making it, so yeah. I'll keep going on this tomorrow, but I'm done for today, and have yourselves a lovely Tuesday, she says on Monday. All right, I'll see you later. Bye! Mwah.